Uh, Everybody's losing players. This transfer portal, even unless you're Alabama or somebody like that, um, it's crazy. It's 10, 12, 14 players per team. I look at these lists, and even the successful teams are losing players. For Tennessee, unfortunately, though, it's arguably your best defensive player. It's one of the best running backs in the SEC. It's possibly your best offensive lineman. So the defections, they're not surprising. You've got a scandal on your hands. You got a messy coaching situation that ends up in a firing, and it's not surprising, of course.
If we're being honest, a number of those transfers are probably happening out of necessity because of the recruiting scandal and the kids themselves being involved in it. I look at specifically Eric Gray. He sat out a game this year because of his reported involvement in some of the recruiting improprieties. And who knows what the full extent of that is. I mean, obviously I question, like, will he even see a down of football at Oklahoma? Because will Oklahoma take the risk on putting him in the game and then having to vacate games because they played a player who has, recruiting problems in his past? Who knows? I don't know exactly what they found, what they'll figure out with him, but there's those kind of considerations. But also, there are kids who almost definitely weren't involved in any of that stuff, who are just jumping ship because it's a disaster at Tennessee. And it's just part of the whole deal with what's gone on in Knoxville. I mean, it's just a nightmare, and there's no kind way to slice it. And so tons of kids have been jumping off the ship. I mean, you look, like, one that I look at, it's like Brent Samaglia, the kicker, doesn't really have a reason to leave Tennessee. He's been good. And he's out. He said that it was, I forget the exact wording he used, but he said because of hardships with the team or something that he was leaving. And, like, some guys just want out. They just want a fresh go. And I don't blame them at all. And I would say this of Josh Heupel, further analysis of Josh Heupel. He has had real success with 2- and 3-star players in his offense, and I hope he's prepared to have to do that at Tennessee. And he's done it in the past, but that's the type of guys that he's going to be working with until now. He's made some decent hires, it seems like, on their recruiting front. I think Tim Banks is one of those. Rodney Garner, getting him to come to Tennessee, however they did that, I mean, that's a great hire. He was the defensive line coach for Gus Malzahn, and so I think, like, hires like that will help you get kids in the door, but they're not going to show up tomorrow, and it's going to be a tough row to hoe for a time for Josh Heupel, just because the timing of the opening up of the transfer portal and sort of that, the 1 year do whatever you want kind of thing that's going on here with the players. It is just a perfect storm to ruin Tennessee's roster. But at the same time, there are a few players on this team who could be game changers, potentially. I mean, I look at the transfer quarterback that I got from Virginia Tech. If he fits really well into Heupel's offense, it's a totally fresh new look, and a guy, he's a dual threat quarterback, and an actual dual threat quarterback, not a Jarek Arantano type of dual threat quarterback. I mean, maybe you find new life that way, and there is actual success in the offensive end, but it really is. I just have to keep going back to, and it's going to be like this until we see Heupel actually coach a game. I just go, you got to show me. And I'll be hopeful for you and go, hey, your offenses have been amazing, and I hope you put one together at Tennessee, but that's the best that I can do. Can I say for sure, oh, he's definitely going to have success? I have no idea. I thought after an 8-4 season that Jeremy Pruitt might have success, and look how that turned out. So here we are. It's Tennessee football for you.
Here we are. The 2- and 3-stars that performed at UCF, okay, I'm going to give the positive slant and the negative slant. The positive slant is that even in the American Conference, even in Group of 5 football, those 2- and 3-stars, those 60th rated recruiting classes should not perform at the level that they did offensively or in the win column. And they are playing high-level Group of 5 football. They're playing at the highest tier. We saw that against the Cincinnati Georgia game. They were legitimate good teams. Not that they would have gone 12-1 in the SEC or the Big Ten. Not saying that in any stretch of the imagination, but when they had to appear against those kind of teams, they performed. Obviously, they barely lost LSU by one score. They beat Auburn. We know the story. Again, week after week grind. They most likely wouldn't have done that. On the negative side, yes, the 2 and 3 stars were competing against Tulane and Tulsa and the likes of those schools week after week after week, and not facing maybe 5 or 6 of the 25 best defenses in the country as they will this year.
It's a totally different ball game in the SEC. But you can also look back at Heupel's history and say his offense did work in the SEC. It worked in the SEC at Missouri. He got Drew Lock to put up massive numbers, and it is I would say a simplified, high-flying offense that is palatable to a lot of players, and that's how Heupel makes it work. The trade-off there that a lot of people have pointed out is that it might not prepare guys the best way possible for the NFL, because it is really an offense that doesn't work at the NFL level, but it does in college. And so there is that trade-off. Do you lose interest from certain players because they look at that offense and go, it's just not right for me. I want to go to a place where I can play more pro-style football and prepare myself better for the big leagues. There's that, but yeah, on the whole, he has done it in the SEC before. But you're exactly right. Week in and week out, it's a totally different animal playing in the American Athletic Conference compared to the SEC. But at the same time, and this is a point I meant to make earlier, talking about Heupel and his diminishing returns year over year, is that a lot of the games that he lost, even in that league, they were very close. I was just looking. I checked to make sure. They lost to Memphis by 1 this season. 1 point. They lost to Tulane by 8. I believe that was their biggest loss of the season. Cincinnati by 3. And as you said, Cincinnati played really high-level football against Georgia and can kind of compete on that level in a similar way to UCF. And they finished the season against who? BYU. And their biggest loss was to BYU.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's not like those losses were like Jeremy Pruitt losses at Tennessee where they lose by 20. He was playing extremely competitive football. They were still one of the best teams in the league. Finished 4th in the league this past year, and so it's all just going to come down to, can you make it translate? And really, with him, what is Tim Banks going to do? How's that defense going to look? Because it's tough to coach defense across from an offense like Heupel's. That offense is quick to score, which is nice, but also it's quick. And so the defense is on the field. His teams have had some of the worst time of possession stats in America at times. So, there's that. And I mean, I've even said one of the tough sells with this defensive coordinator hire for Tennessee was Heupel's offense, because I think probably that defensive coordinator coming in has to know they're going to look bad even if they're good, because their unit is going to be on the field for so long, most likely. And so there's all of that wraps together. Can Heupel make it work in the SEC with his offense, and can they field the defense that is SEC level with the players that they have currently, along with the offense that Heupel is going to run that's potentially high powered, but gets off the field quickly? We'll see. We will see. But honestly, I would say next year, lucky for Heupel. If you want to say lucky, that's probably generous, but lucky for Heupel, next year's schedule is probably the easiest schedule Tennessee has had in years. So there is that. Hey, that's nice for Josh Heupel, I guess. Like, the out of conference is Pittsburgh. So maybe his first season can kind of look a little bit better because there's a few more snoozer games on it than there would normally be. But on the whole, I always just go back to it. Show me what you can do, and we'll go from there.
All right, Charlie Burris, Always lean on Charlie for a little Tennessee talk. And with the Tim Banks news today, taking over as defensive coordinator coming in from Penn State, took this opportunity and also hadn't talked to Charlie since Josh Heupel took the reins. So, Charlie, appreciate you stopping by.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure, Mark.